I mean,
the problem we have now in Nigeria is that it's very difficult even to say the things you are now saying, namely that leadership should be service and that people should be ready to suffer for the sake of everybody else. Why is it so? Because we are practically now agreed that there's no such thing. People have lost trust, lost confidence, lost even hope that you will ever get a government that will serve the people. We are told what politics is. We've reached a stage now where the word politics is a dirty word. Means it's almost like armed robbery.
Exploitation of the people.
Yes. And so, if you want to escape poverty, find your way into the corridors of power, and then you can use it for your own good. Whereas what Jesus would have said is, there is poverty in the land, there is suffering in the land. Let's do something about the poverty.
Yes.
Not escape it.
And leave the majority of the people in poverty.
You are a politician, you see how bad the schools are run and the universities are not operating.
You send your children overseas.
You extract your children from this rot and leave the schools the way they are. That is not what Christmas and Jesus Christ
That is not what leadership
Therefore,
is.
The whole idea that leadership is service is not only a pious Christian aspiration. We must admit that even from reality, it is not only that it works, it is the only system that works unfailingly.
Yes, leadership as service. You see, we used to have, even in the pre-Christian society in Nigeria, we used to have a situation where, and up till recently, we still saw it with people like Aminu Kano and so on, where the house of the politician was an open house where 200, 300, 400, 500 poor people ate every day. Now, the house of the chief was an open house. But we now have a situation where the rich among us are fenced off with barbed wires and ferocious dogs, so the poor cannot approach.
And foreign guards.
And maybe foreign guards. And then, so the poor cannot approach. So even the primitive feudalism, the feudalism of yesteryears, was better in the sense that it was more benevolent when the poor can go to the houses of the rich and the chiefs and eat. Now today, the kind of feudalism we are running, it's terrible.
Let us not think that this is only Nigeria suffering this. It is a disease that has hit the whole world. We only need to listen to Pope Francis and how he speaks about the culture of what he calls, what you describe now as people facing them in.
Yes.
The globalization of indifference.
Globalization of indifference.
Pope Francis speaks of the globalization of indifference. We are living in a world now where nobody cares about anybody else. It is showing itself both in individual terms like the ones you have described, and in terms of national.
Yes.
America first.
Yes, the Trump
if you push
disease.
that to this, it means we don't care what is happening to other countries. America first. The globalization of indifference. And Pope Francis says that is a grave
error.
An error. It's not only that it's bad.
It's an error.
It's bad for us.
Yes.
And the world cannot survive it. Now, this is why we're saying that at the end of the day, it is enlightened self-interest.
It is in our enlightened self-interest to support others.
To do that. Because for as long as we are preaching to people to please think about the poor, and they begin to think that whatever little crumbs that falls from their table that they give to the poor, they've done wonderfully well, we will continue in that direction. But they must be told that until the poor can sit at the table with you,
you can't have peace.
And you will still eat enough, and he will still eat enough, there will be no peace. There will be no peace. We are told that those who build beautiful houses in their villages are afraid to employ local people as guards.
So they bring people from elsewhere.
They go and bring Niger and maybe some Boko Haramis and so on. Because at least they can trust those ones. So bad. In any case, talking about big mansions in the village. What do you need big mansions for in the village?
Which you visit only once a year.
You go there once a year, and at the end of the day, you are hoping that you will retire at 65 and live till you are 90. Who told you that? Some died before they are retired, and their houses are left there. I've seen some even in my own town. Big houses built by people who made plenty of money. None of the children is ready to live at home. The house is like, and you ask yourself why.
And people keep making the same mistake.
Oh, they keep making the same mistake. And why do they build that? Because they are not thinking of beyond
themselves.
Beyond in terms of space and beyond in terms of time.
Now, before we close, the point you have made now, how do we teach our people about the fact that the value of a person's life is to be measured by what you do for others and not necessarily what you do for yourself? Because I think in our own society, that is the crux of the matter.
You have put it rightly. The value of, let's say, the value you put on your own life.
Yes.
Is gauged by the value you put on other people's lives. Or in terms of a society, the level and the value of a society is gauged by the level of the poorest.
How you take care of the poor.
It's the famous story of the link in the chain.
Yes, the weakest link in
you
the
have
chain.
a huge big chain that is very strong.
Yes.
Then there's one little link, one small part of it that is made of thread. How this chain is as strong as
the weakest link. So the chain is as strong as the weakest link. So those people who are on the streets running after fast-moving cars, selling toilet roll,
that is the level of our lives.
That is the level of our civilization.
Yes, that is the level of our lives. That is.
So if we don't do something about lifting the level of those poor people, handicapped people who are rolling on the streets,
we can't go far. We can't go far. We cannot go far. Take another example: education. You run a system where only the children of the rich get well educated. We are shooting ourselves in the feet, because the educated and this elite are maybe about 5% of the population, which means 95% of the children are there. And among these 95%, probably there are the 50% of our geniuses and brilliant people
that we have neglected.
We have completely neglected them. Among the 5% children of the rich people, more than half of them will be useless anyway, because they have not learned to be trained.
Yes.
At the end of the day, the whole society has lost.
Yes.
But if we made effort to expose the children of the poor to a minimum of education, among them will people who will
transform society
and solve the problems that we are all talking about. The problems which they have seen.
Yes.
And the problems which the children of the present rich people are not seeing.
I mean, I tell people, Your Eminence, I tell people that, who told you that the way God functions, it is the successful people of this generation whose children will also be successful in the next generation and transform society. The way God functions...
Well, thank God, God is wiser than that. God is wiser than that. But what surprises me and sometimes pains me is that the rich people of this generation, my generation and yours, we all came from
poverty,
bottom line.
Yes.
We emerged from the bottom.
Yes.
Why do we not allow others to emerge
from
the bottom?
Because the system allowed us to emerge.
Yes.
And now
we create a system that allows no one else to emerge.
Yes.
It is a story of having reached the top, we pull up
the ladder
so that nobody else will climb. And they think God sanctions that. So that when eventually you are beginning to have all kinds of problems, you begin to blame all kinds of evil spirits and wicked aunties and witches. But they forget that God still punishes.
Yes.
When you find the children are problematic, you send them to the best schools and they come out useless.
Yes.
God is doing his own thing, and we can avoid all that. It doesn't take too much.